So this time I have to share the Sisterhood of Ravensbrück. I so enjoyed this book. It was phenomenal. So I've always wanted to learn more about, World War II, things like that. And this was very enlightening. So this is the Sister of Ravensbrück. Historian and author Lynne Olson brings to light the haunting and heroic stories of the women imprisoned in Ravensbrück, the only Nazi concentration camp built exclusively for women. Through the voices of political prisoners, resistant fighters, doctors, and mothers, Olson traces an unforgettable narrative of survival and sisterhood under the worst conditions. What makes this book powerful is not just the history, but how it centers the women whose bravery was often forgotten. French resistance members, Polish students, German resistors, Scandinavian spies, they all endured the unthinkable, and yet many found ways to rebel, organize, and protect one another inside the camp. There were a number of people who were captured, which I was surprised to learn, but for some reason, it did jog a memory that Jehovah's Witnesses were also captured in the concentration camps. So the people who were sent to Auschwitz were exterminated immediately, but the ones who were sent to Ravensbrück were killed slower through forced labor. The camp made profits with working the women with 12-hour work days. They were kept alive if they were fit to work. Once they became ill, they were killed. They were only given numbers as identification. When the women were captured, they were put into train cars, 80 per car, standing room only, with only an oil can for a toilet. They were shaved and naked. They created surrogate families to survive being at the camp. And when the women would work in German factories, making weapons and bombs, this kind of made me laugh. They would mix the good and defective pieces into the bombs, which really pissed the Germans off. And the Germans began to add additional gas chambers and crematories to kill the women. Many of the Polish women were used as medical experiments, such as cutting their legs open and inserting glass, gangrene, any kind of bacteria, and they called these experiments rabbits. There was a rumor that soap was made from human fat, which kind of made me wonder. I mean, these women were not able to gain fat, so I'm not sure how they were able to do that. And when there were executions, the women would sing before and during the executions would also piss the Germans off. So the French de la France newspaper was published by students working underground, and their first printing was in 1941. They had to move the press 7 times, and they managed to distribute over 300,000 papers. And many of the women who wrote for the newspaper wrote under alias names. At the end of the war, the women who were in medical experiments were able to come to America and stay with host families for medical help on restoring their bodies. Many of them had bones broken and reattached inappropriately. It was just really horrific on some of the things that they did to the women in these experiments. So this is on my take on this book. This was not an easy listening. Like I said, I always listen to these books. Olson didn't give us facts, but she gives us flesh and blood women, many of whom risked everything for freedom, justice, and each other. I was especially moved by the acts of quiet rebellion, like they shared food, formed alliances, and smuggling messages. There's deep power in how these women built a network of resilience within the camp gates, even when they were starving, tortured, or close to death. And it reminded me how solidarity is its own form of survival. What lingered most was the bond between the women from vastly different backgrounds, divided by language or country, but united by the same purpose and their pain. The book shines a spotlight on female resilience during one of the most horrific chapters in modern history. And as Olson notes, they didn't just endure, they fought. Now, this is not the only book I've enjoyed on this topic. It is great to get different perspectives from other authors. So if you're a fan of World War II historic fiction, I've also read The Nightingale and The Last Twilight in Paris, which I will share as a link. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the series of the book club, the Mojito Book Club. I will say that, so if you want to read this book, it is 384 pages. If you would like to listen, it is 9 hours. It was awesome. I truly, highly encourage you to check this book out. It was great. Thanks. Oh, and I have a little cold, so that's why I sound a little funny. Bye.